estate plan. I think it's even worse when you're actually involved in estate planning, so which is sort of counterintuitive. But so it's important to have an estate plan, obviously. So what is a bequest? We already talked about it. It's obvious. A commitment in a donor's will or living trust that stipulates how the donor's property is to be distributed upon his or her passing. And when I say, I get a little loosey-goosey when I use the term bequest. When you hear me say bequest, I'm going to roll into retirement plan beneficiary designations into that. I mean, you could drill down and consider those two different things, but it kind of works the same way. If you want to leave money to a charity from a retirement plan asset, technically, well, ideally, it would not pass through your estate plan via your will. You would identify the charity on the retirement plan's beneficiary designation. But for all the continuing slides, just kind of keep that in mind as well. I will point out, though, that there is one thing to remember about retirement plan assets. Whenever someone comes to me and says, okay, I want to leave, let's make it a good one, let's say $1 million to the university via my estate plan. I always make it a point to have some conversation about how that would best work, especially as it pertains to retirement plan assets. Because, again, I'm trying to stay out of the tax weeds here, but let's put it this way. It is much more tax advantageous to transfer retirement plan assets to a charity than it would be general estate assets. And the reason for that is if I were to leave my TIAA-CREF account, let's say to my niece would pay income tax when she received that distribution. If I were to leave my retirement plan assets to the Indiana University Foundation, obviously the Indiana University Foundation does not pay income tax. Therefore, I always try to get a sense of what the donor wants to contribute to Indiana University, and then we at least have some level of discussion as to, okay, can we satisfy some of that, all of that, the majority of that, or whatever, from a retirement plan? So that's just an aside. Bequests. They represent about 90% of what we do at the IU Foundation, and I would guess that it's probably even higher for your organizations. So we're actually, hopefully next week, I'll be hiring another attorney to the gift planning staff. And I always tell them, look, this stuff can be technical, it can be intimidating at the beginning, but realistically, bequests, I mean, if you get nothing out of this other than sort of a working knowledge of bequests, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape, because that's most of what you see out there. All right, so bequests, why are they so popular? Well, as Dr. Seiler pointed out, allows donors to leave a legacy without surrendering current assets or income. These are estate gifts, they're revocable, they're amendable. As we pointed out, everyone is a potential bequest donor. I mean, they just are. So you shouldn't be intimidated discussing this topic with any of your donors. And like I said, fully revocable. I hear all the time people concerned about outliving their resources as we all are living longer. Sometimes that means long-term care, and everyone is concerned about that. Well, that can be addressed very appropriately with through a bequest. I say bequests are flexible. There are a few different types of bequests. Some donors will say, okay, $50,000 to your organization. That would be a specific bequest. Residual bequest or a percentage of estate. These are a little more common. So you might say, okay, $50,000 to my niece and 10% of whatever's left, for instance, to Ivy Tech. That would be an example. There is also something called contingent bequests, just so you know. That's currently what I have in place, where my will says, and not to get morbid, but everything to my wife if living, otherwise to my children if living, otherwise to a variety of charities. That would be a contingent bequest. So there are a lot of different types of bequests, in other words. The target audience, at least for us, is age 55 and older. But I've attended a number of gift planning presentations recently, and I think they've finally convinced me, as has our marketing department, that we also need to think about donors a little younger than that, because I think back to my own situation. I didn't worry about drafting an estate plan until I had my first child. And I know a lot of people who are in that situation because you're trying to name guardians. And there was another statistic I heard one time that said once a charitable institution finds its way into someone's estate plan, the likelihood of remaining in that estate plan is extremely high. And I don't want to misquote that percentage. I should try to find that somewhere in my notes, but it's extremely high. So the point is, the earlier you can get in, even if it's just like me in a contingent situation, that can change over time. So like I said, 55 and older is kind of what we always say, but I certainly wouldn't ignore donors a little younger than that. Marketing is extremely important. We're in a process of completely sort of blowing up what we've done at the IU Foundation for 1,000,000 years as it pertains to how we market plan giving. We're kind of getting away from the sort of traditional 8-page quarterly or 3 times a year newsletter and trying to be a little more strategic. But the point is, marketing is important. So I think for most of the organizations in this room and for us as well, trying to slip something about bequests into a newsletter featuring a donor of some sort, that seems to always resonate with folks. But the key is getting the message out. I'm seeing Nancy Kruger here at WTIU, WFIU. We've partnered with her organization in the past and have actually sent periodic targeted pieces specific to bequests or charitable gift annuities to supplement some of the messaging that's coming from WTIU, WFIU, and from my office, the Office of Gift Planning. So again, there are multiple ways to do that, but you've got to get the message out. This is key. This was drilled into me when I made that transition from private practice to the IU Foundation several years ago. One of the benefits of bequests, right, is that they're fully revocable, but that also means they're fully revocable. So you can't just document the gift and then say thank you and see you later. I mean, by definition, they are revocable. So as I say here, a lifetime of stewardship. When a donor documents a planned gift or a bequest or any revocable gift at the IU Foundation, it gets put into this system, and then we get all sorts of tickler reminders that just sort of remind us and our successors, hopefully, to sort of just engage them, stay on top of that situation. That can be through, we'll get through, I see here. I think I mentioned it later, but donor societies, yeah. That's where a donor society, like a plan giving legacy society, could come into play, where those individuals could be honored in some way, and then you could we choose to try to plan an annual event, actually a couple. One that partners with all of our giving societies, and then one that's unique to plan giving donors, just as a way to keep them engaged and to thank them repeatedly for their gift. Just the mechanics of kind of how a bequest program might look. I mean, we require the bequest to actually be in writing. I'm not saying everybody in this room needs to do that, but we do. That can be through what we call a formal gift agreement, an email to me saying, hey, Brian, you're in my estate plan at X amount or whatever. That would work, a letter, but we do require something in writing. Our office, again, Dr. Seiler pointed out, there is bequest language, maybe a little more for us than some of your organizations, is key. The key for us is the gift needs to come to the Indiana University Foundation for the benefit of WTIU, WFIU. Again, that may not be an issue